So, out of the blue, Nintendo announced the Nintendo Switch Lite today, and there are a slew of features which I think you guys need to be aware of between the regular Switch and the Switch Lite. Also, I wanted to talk about the Collector Edition, which they announced today, which will launch at the same time as the non-Collector Edition console. And it really is rare, if you think about it, to see Collector Edition consoles launch at the same time with some of the other hardware. We saw it back with the Xbox One Day 1 edition, but really outside of that, it doesn't happen too often at all. So that's actually kind of neat. Now, I've gotten most of my information from this Engadget article, so make sure you click the link in the description box below and show them some love as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. I could tell you up front, this is a budget version of the Switch. It's smaller, it has less features, so be aware of that. And we're going to talk about all that here in great detail. You'll notice that the D-pad has changed. Over here, the regular Switch has 4 buttons. That has been replaced with a traditional D-pad. After doing a little bit of research online, it is clear Nintendo does not want you to think that this is going to be a standard thing. It is not. They have no plans at any point right now to turn this into this on the Joy-Cons that we already have. Speaking of Joy-Cons, these Joy-Cons on the Nintendo Switch Lite do not rumble. They do not disconnect. So the idea of you switching it up, so to speak, whether it is on a giving a controller to your friend and turning it sideways, or docking it. That's another thing. You can't dock it anymore. Those are all things of the past. This is one giant piece of plastic. It does not detach. And also the screen is just a little bit smaller. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the nitty-gritty, and let's kind of see if this is something that makes sense. Then at the end, we'll talk about the Collector Edition, which was announced, something that I think is really cool. First and foremost, the Switch Lite will run you $100 less than the current normal Switch, and you'll see that the dimensions are slightly smaller. Because of the smaller dimensions, you're also going to get a smaller display size in the screen, and it's going to weigh slightly less as well. I can't really say that the current Switch feels too small to me. If anything, I don't think me personally, because I got a little bit bigger hands, I don't know if I would want a smaller Switch. So keep that in mind if you're an adult and you're looking to get into the Switch game. You're going to be getting a smaller console. Now, this isn't on terms of a Nintendo 3DS or anything like that, but it is smaller. The output resolution is the same. It's going to be 720p. Note that it does not have a docked resolution, which currently upscales it to 1080 on the regular Switch because the Switch Lite does not support a dock. And yes, there is a USB port on the bottom of both the Nintendo Switch Classic, I guess, and the Nintendo Switch Lite. But note that the Nintendo Switch Lite only supports USB-C charging. If you plugged it into a dock, it would not work. It's got the same processor and the same CPU from what I can tell. There has been some discussion as to whether or not the processor is a little bit better. I don't think that's the case in everything I've read. A lot of people are saying they can't confirm it, which to me would mean no. And it would be really silly for Nintendo to change this drastically, especially if it's locking at the 720p resolution, only because games would run slightly better here, although on a smaller screen with lower resolution than they would on the Switch. And I think when you start doing these mid-console cycle upgrades this early in the game, you're really asking for it. And I look to Xbox One with the S, with the X, with the PS4 Pro, with the PS4. You get a lot of these mid-generation console upgrades, and it's hard to see what's going on. So I think Nintendo's doing the right thing in locking this in place. It's going to have the same RAM. It's going to have the same internal storage with the same external storage capability via a micro SD card. The big thing here, which a lot of us are, kind of talking about, at least on the forums, is what games will and won't be supported. Now, there are a lot of games out there that take advantage of the dock, and they look a lot better. Nintendo has really worked hard on trying to make those two experiences the best they can. But if you've played Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I'm going to assume if you own a Switch that you have, then you know it runs better on the dock. And it looks a little bit cleaner, has a little bit more presentation to it. And there's a lot of question on games that aren't going to support that. One that comes to mind is one that didn't do very well. That was 1-2 Switch. And the whole idea with 1-2 Switch is that you could hand a controller to a buddy and you guys could play the games on the fly. Well, if your controllers are essentially welded to the side of your screen, that's going to be a little bit hard to do. Doesn't mean you can't play them by yourself. Don't know why you'd want to, but you're not going to be able to. So I think this is going to be one of the major selling points, and expect to see Nintendo either start to break off pure Switch capability in terms of having a, go on the fly and a little bit of rebranding, or expect them to be very clear in the future on which consoles support which games. They have the same 802.11ac Wi-Fi standard. Note that the Switch Lite does not have wired network support because the USB-C port does not connect to a dock. So you're not going to be able to, this is only purely for charging, so you're not going to be able to get wired Ethernet like you currently can on the dock via USB-C connector to an Ethernet connector. So you're not going to, it's going to be wireless only. Because of, again, the lack of a dock, you're not going to get any video output. Now, you are going to get slightly better battery life, and this number seems to be in contention. I've seen numbers that say early development shows that it's as much as 40% and as low as 5%. I think it's going to be slightly better. If everything else is completely identical, then for nothing else, you're going to get slightly better performance out of your battery due to the display size. But keep that in mind, I don't think it's going to be significant. And as I mentioned before, the controllers are connected to the side of the console, but they do lose the coveted HD rumble, which is something that I think absolutely destroys this being exciting for a lot of people, because that HD rumble is one of the nicer rumble devices on any controller. You can really feel distinct vibration. And I think that that is really going to hurt this console. You want my professional opinion? I think that's going to hurt it an awful lot. Now, there are 3 colors you can choose from. You can see them right here. But the collector edition console is the one that I want to show off here. Look at how cool this is. This is the Nintendo Switch Lite. I'm going to destroy this name. Zacian and Zamazenta edition. And these are Pokemon, legendary Pokemon, which are coming in the Sword and Shield Pokemon games launching later this year. And you can see that they've actually added some watermarking on the actual back of the console. Now, this is something that I have said for a long time that I did not like about the current Nintendo Switch Collector Edition consoles, which are really few and far between, is that because the Joy-Cons are separate, they treat the bezel part of the screen, I'm talking a traditional Switch here, separate from the Joy-Con, so you don't get very big artwork on the back. One of the things I think the Nintendo Switch Lite can absolutely capitalize on, and it looks like they're doing so here, is putting bigger pieces of artwork, because there's no seam, there's no disconnect between the Joy-Con to the actual screen bezel anymore, so you're going to be able to put more artwork and more real estate here. I think that's something that is pretty cool. I'm curious to see how far they push this design going on in the future. And on the front, you're going to get different colored buttons instead of the standard gray buttons, which are on the standard yellow, gray, and turquoise Switch. You're going to be getting some really nice Sword and Shield colored here. You're going to get some light blue here and some like pink magenta-ish here. I like it. I think it's a pretty sleek looking console. It definitely pops up against the gray. I think that's really, really kind of neat. One last thing to point out, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, I don't think so. You'll notice that there's no dedicated kickstand on the back of the Switch anymore. I think that also is going to help the value of putting a nice piece of artwork across this back plate. However, you're going to always have to hold it. So why they're showing the Switch Pro controller for sale directly below it is beyond me. Unless you're having a friend hold this for you, or you find a way to lean it against the wall in a creative way, or use a dock stand, even though you're not going to be able to dock it, it's just going to be used as a holder. I don't know if necessarily the Nintendo Switch Pro controller is going to do you any good. The extra Joy-Con controllers probably will not either. The Pokeball might if you want to hold the console in one hand and the Pokeball in the other. So there you have it. That's an early look at the upcoming Nintendo Switch Lite. They still sell the regular one if you want to spend the extra $100 and get the docking feature and get a slightly bigger screen and get the kickstand on the back and the controllers with the HD rumble. But if you're really on the go and you're looking to save a couple dollars and you don't mind the lack of the HD rumble, then the Nintendo Switch Lite may be for you. I hope you guys found this video informative. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.